Hello and welcome to session 2 of Automotive Logistics Europe. In this session, we will discuss how new technology is disrupting traditional operations, unlocking more potential in the supply chain. My name is Joanne and I am the editor of Automotive Logistics magazine. In this session, we will hear presentations from the following speakers: Jörg Blechinger, Director of Logistics for Magna in Europe; Björn Klippel, Chief Executive of Tim Consult; Marta Fuentes del Castillo, Director of Business Development at BXP Digital; and Stephen Carr, who is Commercial Director of Peel Ports Group. I would now like to invite Jörg to come and give his presentation.
Thanks, that's the paparazzi now. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here again. Before I start with the presentation, I'd like to welcome you here at this event. Unfortunately, I couldn't join the meeting or the evening event yesterday because I was stuck at the Munich airport due to the force majeure, but also logistics problem. So I arrived at 2 o'clock in the morning here in Bonn. However, the event is great for me. I saw some very interesting presentations already today. My presentation will not focus on KPIs. I will not show any diagrams, but what I would like to share with you is some thoughts, and I would like to draw your view to a view I have, a view from automotive industry. My presentation, The Future of Supply Chain, Unlocking the Full Potential. I will come to that final conclusion at the end of my presentation. I would like to talk about where are we going to, where are we at the moment, and where are we going to. Fact is that our world is getting closer. In the meantime, there's a global network. People are communicating over long distances. We manage material flows and complex material flows and a complex car industry. People are working together via all over the globe, all over the time zones in the Magna company, 165,000 people in a production network of 335 plants all over the world. What we see in our company, interfaces disappear. So in daily life, in daily business, a lot of applications are supporting the business, the day-to-day business. We get more efficient, we get more faster information. We are able to manage material flows connected with the information flow all over the globe, but managed in different applications, different processes that are supported by those applications. Interfaces between all partners in a supply chain are disappearing. Partners, suppliers, service providers, our people, our customers are getting closer to each other. That is really a fact. That is exponential change now happening since the last 2 years. Supply chain structures are changing significantly. Who expected that hype in electromobility? Who expected that hype in electronification in the automotive industry? Autonomous driving, what does that mean to us? The electronification in the car is increasing significantly. But that means we are building brand new cars, the next generation. If we are looking, for instance, to a front-end module of the Actros, this is the Daimler car, the truck. Now, that's a front-end module with a lower complexity, but if we would like to implement platooning in some years, this will be a high-tech product with a lot of sensors around and a lot of electronic components around. One example. Inside the car, head-up displays, displays to manage the car, the boarding system, vision systems. If you look at the Automotive exhibition in Geneva, you've not, I think you've not seen any mirrors outside. Outside mirrors, inside mirrors. Displays will come. So vision systems, camera systems, inside displays to show where we are, if we're driving back or if we're driving to see the surrounding of the car. What does that mean? Electronification, electronic components will significantly increase in the car, but that means new supply chains will be established. That means the footprint of production completely will change. We are transporting high-value parts, so we have to track and trace our deliveries. We will have higher stocks, high-value parts, higher stocks in the supply chain. To get that down, to get more efficient, we have to implement tracking and tracing systems. So we have to put a very strong focus in future on the controlling of the supply chain. Electromobility, the car is not so complex, but what does that mean? Also changing supply chains. The main suppliers for the batteries are in China. I have heavy parts, I have dangerous goods to transport, different requirements to the logistic service providers. That means also changing the supply chain. Lithium, one of the raw materials, is coming out of the deepest Africa. That means, how do we get that out? We have to think about that. We have to establish the infrastructure there. We have to use the right equipment to get that raw material out. We have to find the right ports. And we have to find especially the organization and the systems and the people that manage that supply chain out of the deepest Africa, out of an absolutely unstable political environment. The next challenge for the logistics supply chain coming up. So the supply chain structure completely will change during the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. We will have significantly changing requirements to fulfill by our service providers, by our partners in the supply chain. Future mobility. At the moment, we have 29 mega cities all over the world. In 2030, it will be 40. So urbanization will go on, will go forward. But that means we have to take care more about the last mile. This means we have to look at logistics within an urban environment. So we have to focus more on such issues. Car sharing, how do we do that in a town? Is that only simple logistics? Logistics must be connected via IT systems. So a huge effort to be done in software solutions that increase our ability to connect everything in that urban environment. Apps will come. We have to bring that together. We have to connect all those solutions within that urban environment. Of course, we have the supplies to the towns, but the last mile concepts will be in focus during the next years until 2030. So, next challenge for logistics. What does that mean for us people still? And that's what I'm telling all the time. People are still key to success. We focused in the past on specialists in logistics. Now we have to understand processes behind. We have to understand complex supply chains, complex products. We have to manage that. So a deep process understanding is required from our people. Our educational system is not in line with that what we need in future. We are currently working together with universities. We are developing students for things we don't even know in future. So how do we deal with that? In future we need specialized generalists. If something's going wrong on the iPhone, something is not working, I still have to use my brain to solve the issue. And the de-skilling is one of the biggest issues I see in future. So people need to have a very strong understanding for innovation, creativity, and a deep process understanding of logistics, how even although our applications support those processes. So if something is going wrong, we have to focus on the people. So that is my key message. Unlocking the full potential. I see like an orchestra, Philharmonic Orchestra in Vienna. Every one of those guys, of those 100 guys, is a very good player, a very good musician. And if you see them on the street, maybe, fine, perfect. I think the key to success is to bring that together into one orchestra. And that's the same with all the solutions that are on the market at the moment. We have to connect everything, and we have to bring that into sort of an orchestra and make the best out of it to manage the future supply chain. So that are my thoughts from automotive point of view, and I'm happy for questions from your side.
Thanks. So the format of this session is that we will have a short amount of time now for questions and answers with Jörg, and then we'll move on to the other presentations. So if anybody from the audience would like to ask Jörg a question, just put up your hand and somebody will come with a microphone and state your name and your company and then ask the question. Then we will have a question and answer session at the end for all of the speakers that we will hear during this session. So, any questions? Okay, so I'll start with one of mine. My first question would be, has Magna's European logistics operation changed significantly during the past 10 years in terms of implementing digital technology to achieve key objectives?
During the last years, we've established a lot of systems that are getting integrated more and more. So especially we had a strong focus on the operational systems, so standardization of our ERP systems. That was the basis, the fundamental basis for getting forward, making progress. But we also had a strong focus on our planning systems, So we've established systems that are able to record the data we require for logistics plannings. And we established the right system solutions to structure our supply chain, to engineer the supply chain, and not only the external supply chain, but also the internal supply chain. We're making the next step now with our smart factory approach that was initiated some months ago to make our plants fit for the future and our company fit for the future.
Is it correct to say that Magna is starting to centralize its operations more and to try to roll out systems globally?
No, that's not correct. Magna is a very decentral operating company, and that's good. So responsibility has to be in the plant, in the production, and the plant, the operational organization there has to take responsibility for the product. But definitely it makes sense to have sort of a coordination function and an expert organization that is looking over everything, overviewing the structures, the processes, the methodologies, the systems, and looking at standardization and especially helping the plants with best practices and going forward in improvement projects.
Any questions or comments on that from the audience? Okay. So my next question would be, who do you think is driving the implementation of new technology? Would you say it's suppliers attempting to meet the requirements of the OEMs, or is it the vehicle manufacturers who are leading the way, or is it the logistics companies?
Hard to answer. In my opinion, I can only talk from my point of view as a TO 0.5. We are also producing the cars in Graz. We're supplying the components to our customers. I can only talk about my company, and we are pushing that forward. Definitely, we need our partners in the supply chain. We need the feedback from our customers, how to improve the processes towards our customers. We need the feedback and the innovation power of the suppliers and the service providers in the supply chain. I think we're in a very competitive environment in Europe. There's a sort of a saturation going on in automotive in Europe, in North America, growing market in China. And however, workforce is limited in Europe. So we have to get more efficient, and we have to get into the direction of digitalization and automation. And for that, we need all the ideas and innovation power of all supply chain partners. But definitely we are pushing that forward.
So would you agree or disagree with the idea that every company is now a digital business?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Would you agree or disagree with the idea that every business is now a digital business?
Never forget the brain power. Yes, it is getting, our processes, our business is getting more digitalized and automized. Yes, but never forget the brain power and the human being behind. And that is the key.
So, for example, if a tier supplier was implementing a new technology, what steps would they take to try to minimize the disruption? Would it be, for example, the training of the personnel, preparing the teams?
Definitely. We have to focus on people development, or suppliers, service providers have to focus on people development, on training of their employees.
So now a couple of questions on blockchain, perhaps. Does Magna use blockchain at the moment, or is it considering using blockchain?
We are analyzing the potentials.
Okay. And how much of an impact do you think blockchain would have?
At the moment, hard to say. We see potential, otherwise we wouldn't look into that. But I think we have to make some more thoughts about that issue, about that topic.
Any comments or questions? Okay, question at the front.
Yeah, can you hear me?
There's a microphone on its way.
Good morning. Dirk Willmann. I'm the director for logistics at Ford Motor Company in Europe. And my question is Magna, do you have any experience with digital supply chain? And if yes, which element of it and how did you start?
Yes, we have. In different levels. We have 335 plants worldwide. So you can imagine all the plants are on a different level. Very mature plants. Some plants have something to do. We've experience in digitization in almost every single process in the supply chain, starting at the supplier, from the supplier up to the customer. It is hard to answer, but we have tracking and tracing system. We are using ADI. This is digital. We are using ADI. We have tracking and tracing systems. We are using the ASN to get into the plant. We are using scanning systems or RFID solutions, even more developed solutions in our plants. We are using predictive analytics. We are using, we're stepping into that now. But all of that menu card is implemented in the Magna plants. Is it the same menu card in every plant? No. But we've experience with almost every single solution and digital process.
Yeah, does it include also real-time information on supply chain? You just mentioned ASN, for example. Do you have real-time information, or is it the electronic process that you once a part is on the way that you issue in ASN, and then basically you are relying on that information until the part is received?
We also have, we are using real-time information, of course, yes. But it depends on the plant again.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, there's one at the back.
Morning, Chris Godfrey, Renault Nissan. With all of the digitalization that you've done, can you give an estimate of the increased efficiency of your supply chain?
When I'm talking about planning, for instance, our planning systems, we could decrease efficiency or increase efficiency of our supply chain plannings by 30 to 40%, getting the time down or the duration time for logistics planning. That is one example. It's hard to say which efficiency increase you can generate.
In terms of the impact on headcount, what is the impact on headcount of all your digitalization? It was mentioned in some of the early discussions about AI digitalization impact on people. Has there been an increased efficiency level within the headcount of Magna?
We have significant increases in efficiency. That's what we faced in the implementation. I do not want to talk about numbers. It's hard to talk about the numbers. Again, the plants are different, on a different level. We achieve increases of efficiency of 3-5% on the other plants. We achieve more, yeah. But it depends on the maturity of the plant, definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we can ask some more questions at the end, but I would like to invite our next speaker to come and give us a presentation. So Björn Klippel, would you like to come up? Thanks.
So you have a machine for me. Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. Great pleasure to speak to this great audience. I mean, we are invited to speak about the impact of technology. How does it disrupt business in general, automotive logistics in particular? And say my answer, the answer I intend to give, you see in a short form in the headline selected. Technology in the way we see it, looking through the eyes of our customers onto what's going on, is a supporter. It's not the solution per se. Jörg said the same. Let's not forget people behind. I should say the message I want to convey is I have good news for you. You are management, and management will still be needed just for implementing the opportunities that well application of technology brings. Now, let me guide you through the 3 slides I have. We are supposed to be short. Let's take the first one for an overview. Redundancy is professional, some say. You will find the key messages and then we elaborate. I will say cut short on speaking too many details, and I'm looking forward to your questions. Well, first of all, there are innovative approaches. I mean, this is what it's all about. I think the whole conference circles around that. And our interpretation and the way we work is that with technology we support all that. And this idea will also re-emerge on the procurement side as well as in planning and operation, because one of the mega trends, as big as technology is, that the integration of logistics, procurement and planning and operations, if you should say, is a very true, root or driver of optimization. Now, just to call up the 3 key theses, and they are reflected in the charts to follow. First of all, technology is a supporter, not a solution per se. I know my technology colleagues from IT background, they hate us to say that, but I think that's what we can support. The second point is, and I will not dive too deeply into that, I'm looking forward to your questions. Our key job as consultants, I'm founder of a company employing now 60 people with offices in Europe and the US. We support our customers, as we say, in optimizing end-to-end supply chains and global value networks, and that always asks for an integration of the procurement side. We don't run our trucks, planes and ocean vessels ourselves, and on the other side, the way how all this is planned and operated. And what we can see is, and you have heard examples of that this morning, Jörg pointed it out, I mean, the expansion of global networks is still going on. The real integration of global value networks is happening right now and in the near future. That makes your job more difficult, more challenging. Supports my point that no computer will take over your role. And the second thing is that recently we have experienced, after years of a very easy life, let's face it, that we saw disruptions on the market side. Ocean consolidation, hunching disaster, etc., etc. Air cargo, the 2017 hike, road transportation in the US running crazy, in Europe running crazy. So we have disruptive market forces, and the question is, how can we act? And for repeating myself, we have to react by finding new ways, procurement and planning and operation. And then the question comes, can we do things differently, easier, with less headcount, faster, more fact-based decision-making when we use the means of technology? And at that point, I'm fully in line with my IT colleagues. We need them. That's where we have to work, and I'm going to outline a couple of examples. The last point is that we say, well, what we speak about are best practices. Are they totally changed? Do we have forget everything? Now that we have blockchain or a sensor on a truck, the world is changing? No. But definitely we need, let's call it a kind of recalibration. The best solution now is not exactly the best solution 3 years ago. So I'm pretty sure Magna experiences that. Supplier, Ford, will experience that, and the question is then, what can we do? And here, of course, technology is an enabler. That alone for itself doesn't lead to anything. But coming back to the point, when we speak technology, yes, we have a huge innovation on the sensor side. I mean, I'm a business administration man, genetically logistician from the family I'm born in, so not an engineer, but what's going on the sensor side is just great. Not for autonomous driving, for capturing information. If Hewlett-Packard ships laptops by rail from China to Europe, they are temperature controlled, they are continuously monitored by GPS, etc., etc. Sensor technology, great development. Connectivity, Internet of Things, there are better people to speak about that. On the processing side, we are getting better and better. Analytically, to process all that information, we have a lot of technology applications. And not to forget, we are now coming closer to our working area, the way we make decisions change. For instance, this is a point to stop for 10 seconds and outlining what my company is doing. You could say we are kind of working in this orange cycle. We have no capacity of optimizing the hardcore technical side of the game. These are instruments, but when it comes to processing, freight information, worldwide shipment data, the analytical side, helping you to make better decisions, and to a degree implementation we don't speak about this morning. That's the area where we work with 60 people. And let me say one thing, and maybe you'll come back to that. I mean, we are all flooded with information. I see it in my kids, adolescent and post-adolescent, all the time, a lot of information. I don't say they are not intellectual, but the intelligence to know, to understand what's going on, that's the point. We analyze tenders, global network tenders, 17,500 price items, 50 carriers invited. I mean, who the hell has an understanding of how to analyze that? So to bring all this information we collect by these devices to a better fact-based decision making, this is a true challenge. One of many which technology brings. And again, I support what Jörg said. We cannot bring all that intelligence into machines. We have some proprietary tools to optimize and analyze. And if I'm honest, and I like to be, I should say the average customer makes not more use than 5% of the functionality, which doesn't say that the customers are dumb. It's just a challenge we haven't met so far to make all that what is possible really easy to grasp and work with. Now, coming back to another caveat, maybe that's due to the fact that we are not IT people in the first place. There is a saying, well, if you have a suboptimum strategy and process and you put technology in or IT systems and you don't change anything, what you have is an expensive suboptimum or more expensive suboptimum strategy and process. So from that point of view, it shall support what I was trying to say. Per se, just implementing devices to track or just doing time slot planning more dynamic than in the past, and we don't change the way the goods in works, or we don't take the conclusions for the way we procure, how we procure, nothing happens. And I will show you a couple of examples about what I mean. Now, so again, for the third time, technology is a supporter. It's not a solution per se. Well, what you can now say, well, this guy is rather abstract, and an overbearing consultant would say at that point, shall I speak louder or slower? But that's not, of course, not what we do here. I suggest that we speak about a number of examples. Let's take up this idea that we have these two circles. We have the procurement circle, we have the supply chain circle, the management circle, which is a challenge in itself, by the way, particularly in automotive. Because since Sarbanes-Oxley, it's state of the art to have segregation of duties. And this is, of course, causing some friction when it comes to really integrating procurement approaches and supply chain approaches. A good part of the challenges we see in practical life logistics life. And the good part of the reasons why some technology solutions don't fully unlock the potentials right now is indeed the fact that for institutional reasons, particularly in the big companies, this segregation of duties really cut information lines and joint decision making. So one of the mega trends surely is to change the way of doing joint decisions, but hopefully you come back with questions on that. Now, just to call up 4 examples. You are not surprised if I tell you that, my team is working in these circles, but there are examples of customers, some cases more than one, multiple, behind these assumptions. Now, let's take one thing the company has a reputation for. We are running the biggest market intelligence exercise in transportation on a worldwide basis, and I think 11 of the 15 biggest OEMs are part of that, next to other world-class companies, about 100 members. So we also look extra industry, so across industries, not just within automotive. But now let's look at what technology brought, because you could say, benchmarking, that's an old concept. And I also don't say that all of our 100 customers are already working like that, but some of them do. Yeah, so it's a kind of an automatic data collection. You download shipment data from operative systems, you download information from rate management systems. Yeah, 5,000 port pairs, 2 hours processing, including a first check, 400,000 containers. That's what is possible. For other customers, you work for weeks. Just imagine what that means for the transparency they have internally for their decision making if we need weeks to just take in their data. The second thing is we can monitor in a regular update actually more than 30,000 micro markets, 10,000 in air cargo alone. Without technology, impossible. The processing behind, the analytical powers, we do it inbound, outbound. That's the sales pitch element of that. There are web-based tools to handle all that information, because the time when people had fun looking through 6,000 PDF charts is of course long past. You do, using BI functionalities, individually tailored dashboards. So what is the message? The message is that the promise to bring strategic network visibility, so it's not a track and trace idea, it's the question, I'm responsible on a worldwide basis for the procurement of a big OEM. How can I understand how performant my agreements and my execution is all around the world? We support the procurement, a contribution to that. The only way to really make it feasible and to keep it payable is that it is a heavy application of technology. Actually, the web-based tools are developed since 2006, 2007. The term cloud-based hadn't been invented at that time, but we just had to react to the masses of information. And the promise is network visibility. Oh, black, no, this is the right one. The second point is strategic tender management. You say, yes, our tender platforms was invented by Moses already. But it's all a question of what you do. It's not submission tables in and out. There are smart capacities. I would not exactly call it artificial intelligence, but if you have a tender of the size I described, and you can start analyzing a minute after closing, because you put the smartness of checking for data plausibilities in the machine, you signal it to the carrier if he tries to do something wrong. These are small contributions to really take away a lot of workload. You have business rule-based scenarios. You may say, we have specialists running that. We say the tool has to be good enough that the manager buying can do 90% of the optimization, because then he feels better informed, he takes a more sound decision. And we have to work, technology is an enabler, with psychologists, with designers, to make these heaps of information available to the decision maker in a form that he can work with, tailorable, easy to configure. But that's only possible using modern technology in the good old form. You either had a standard or you placed an expensive consultant next to a customer who kept doing PowerPoint charts. But that's of course not state of the art, and particularly not if you run such procurements in deployed teams, 5 regions around the world, 8 people working on an ocean freight or air cargo tender. So this is a totally new setup. The function is as old as transportation. The way how we handle that, manage that, is of course fostered very much by technology. So fact-based decision making in the true sense of the word. So not just one guy knowing what's going on after diving into Access databases for weeks. And on the other side, it's satisfied stakeholders and satisfied carriers, because the right tools in that form are a means of communication more than just of analyzing data. I know it's difficult to take what I mean, but it changes this. If you have such a tool in operation, it really changes the entire approach, not just to procuring, but also to tying in the supply chains into what you are doing. It is a contribution to this integration with the guys owning the budget in itself. It changes, it's a supporter, and thereby it unlocks new potentials. Now, to perhaps speed up, let's look on the operations side. I mean, time slot management, as I said, is an old thing, but there are solutions to not rigidly plan time slots, and if you miss it, you are the trucker, you have to queue up. Yeah, it's a dynamic reallocation of slots. It takes into consideration, it reflects the traffic situation. I'm a little delayed, automatically processed, or we have a problem at the loading gate, or whoa, this loading gate was empty, was clean earlier than promised. So technology helps us to be faster, to be smarter, and this contributes to a quick turnaround time. This is not just a question of saving money per se. In today's situation, look at the capacity and service crisis in Europe transportation, for example. Yeah, those of you who are powerful and pay are customers, but those of you who are powerful pay and make sure that the turnaround is fast, even to the point that the driver is handled fairly, have less problems than those who, say, mistreat their supplier base. I put that on here by purpose because, again, technology alone is nice, but honestly, a coffee machine and a warm welcome to the driver climbing out of his truck may contribute to your attractivity as a shipper as much as a nice time slot management system. Eventually, and particularly the big OEMs are experimenting on that side very much. Some do it in the SAP direction, others in the Oracle direction. Some are using, say, modules of a comprehensive solution developed by their own. Again, here, what we call transport management is changed by the way we apply technology. Take the one solution. I wouldn't like to nominate the customer, but maybe he will speak even today or tomorrow. Control tower, not by means of a 4PL sitting somewhere or a centralized operation in Krakow, but using technology to bring control tower functionalities at the desks of 300 materials planners who have, enabled by web technology, the capacity to really track where their trucks are, get the information earlier, and can react, integrating transportation with the material supply, the supplier, in a better form. Dynamic route planning is an old thing. Automated fill rate measuring, of course, if I want to plan my trucks fully. In some environments, you indeed have master data, which allows you not just the weight, but also the volume to plan correctly. But we have applications in some fields where really camera systems not just identify merchandise on and offloading, so that nobody needs to walk around and do the scanning any longer. It's a kind of an automated process, but also using devices to really figure out the volumetric measurement of such a shipment, which is nice because that, of course, is a very relevant information for increasing the utilization rate, which for many OEMs is still in the 70s or 80s. So there is huge improvement possible, again, enabled by sensor technique, but built into processing systems that indeed lead to better utilization. So again, one example, increased truck utilization, improved resilience if you should like, because if you know earlier you can react better. Last statement here, I forgot, the dynamic load allocation. I wouldn't say that the automotives are the leaders here. We did that in the chemical industry. If you have special equipment, liquid bulk, say, limited capacity, you buy. So procurement does secure capacity in buying. But on the other side, there may be shortages, extra demand, a carrier having a problem. So what they, for example, do is they don't go to the market buying spot. That's impossible. Because these guys have high quality standards, just not anyone can enter a Ford or a Daimler factory. But what they do is they put in the range of the pre-qualified carriers, knowing the plant, having an EDI connection, they put a dynamic element of extra demand into that group, and of course using machines, so to say, you can easily find within this group of pre-qualified carriers such who can help you. And the old way, we suffer delays or we cover it by extra stocks, can be handled, can be solved in a different form. Again, not a new idea. It's as old as mankind. But if information and coordination doesn't cost anything and can run into within minutes, hours, then of course I have a whole suite of new opportunities. And in that sense, indeed, technology is changing the way how we are running at the moment. But it's just the beginning. We see a lot of changes, and they are, to come to the end, the biggest, the most impressive ones, if we can really integrate the procurement aspect of your job with the planning and operations aspect. So far, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Björn. Next we have Marta from BXP Digital.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much for being today here with all of you. So I would like, first of all, to introduce the company, because it's a pure new company in the world. So we are operating globally. So it's Brambles Digital. Maybe you know better, you know the CHEP brand, which is much more well known by all of you. So I invite here by the CHEP Automotive business. In order to present more or less what is the Brambles vision, not only in the automotive business, but much more focused in my presentation in the consumer goods sides. As you know, Brambles is operating across the globe in different industries, and we are massive penetration in the pallet business, working with the biggest manufacturers and retailers across the world in the consumer goods side. So I would like today maybe to bring you some ideas that can be a food for thought for the automotive business as well, of some use cases that we are already piloting and proving in the consumer goods. So I would like to start with a video that maybe can introduce better than me our company.
With an economy driven by the digital revolution, consumers and businesses want products that are safe, sustainable, and cost-effective, whether they're buying something from around the corner or around the world. And behind it all are the trusted relationships and efficient logistics that ensure the world and its products go round. Brambles is the global leader in sustainable supply chain logistics solutions, moving the world's most trusted brands. More than 550 million pallets, crates, and containers are shared, reused, and travel extensively through the supply chain every year. Operating in 60 countries with a network of 850 service centers. Brambles is bringing the power of digital intelligence to physical assets with BXP Digital to provide customers with new, innovative, and sustainable solutions that illuminate, reimagine, and transform global supply chains. Built upon Brambles' supply chain expertise, BXP Digital taps into the Internet of Things to combine artificial intelligence, enterprise applications, and sensors, taking supply chain logistics to the next level. We are revolutionizing the movement of the world's goods, providing end-to-end visibility and transparency across customer supply chains like never before. Forging new relationships, establishing new guidelines, and taking partnerships to the next level by collaborating across our network to grow together and imagine new possibilities. Together, we are raising the bar as the catalyst for change, setting our sights higher and driving the future of supply chains worldwide. Welcome to BXP Digital.
Okay. Saying that, I would like to highlight pretty much across all my presentation the fact that the world is learning the power of sharing. So sharing is something that we have understood pretty well with the circular economy, which is a concept that is very recent, but that all the companies, already enterprises, has adopted, because is putting together the different parties within the ecosystem in order to share information, in order to provide new businesses or new products as well. So the world is changing. This is something that we are really understanding, no? Because in our normal life, we are using new business model, new companies that are offering the same services that we had before, but in a different way. So Amazon, Uber, Airbnb, or Spotify are the clear examples of how everything is now interconnected. So we are moving from the traditional pipeline business models based on the management of the assets, basically, and the products, to platform business models that where the interface, the control of the interface of the consumers is the powerful of this specific business model, these companies, because they can also deliver new services, new solutions by having the control of those interfaces, analyzing the data, providing new solutions, new services to the consumer side. So connect and share is something that we are very familiar with in the consumer side, but the question here is, what does this mean for the supply chain? So is it possible that maybe we can figure out how we can open our supply chains to other players in the market? So are we really willing to share this information, the information that we control from our enterprises, to the rest of the players in the supply chain in order to make them more effective, more efficient, given the fact that everything will be interconnected? So that's is the question that for me is much more difficult to answer, because in the industry 4.0, almost the majority of the companies are facing the digitalization of their operations, so from manufacturing, purchasing, logistics, so everything is going to be digitized in the next future, so the companies are looking for new solutions in order to make more efficient and optimize their operations. But the question here is not, what are you doing for become more digital in the future in order to improve your own operations? The question here is how we are going to work together in the future, sharing data, sharing information between the different parties by creating a data share ecosystem between the different parties in the supply chain that really help us to be more efficient, to optimize our processes and the whole chain that at the end will benefit the final consumer. So if we look at the normal activity in the supply chain in our companies, so we have a lot of different processes that are managed by different areas. So from the marketing that is realizing, forecasting, what will be the demand from the customer side, that then, inform the manufacturing in order to produce those goods that are going, to order raw material from the producers. And then finally, the last chain that is going to distribute the final product to the final consumer. So this chain is being made by different players, and they are not working in connection right now. So if we figure out the digitization of all processes across this ecosystem in the supply chain. So digitization is going to really bring down all the walls that we have actually, and we will have a much more smart and precise supply chain where every single part and process will be interconnected, and the demand and the distribution will be absolutely connected. So we don't need to have forecasts in the future, because we will be able to understand which is our inventory management, the inventory of our customers, in order to link everything and make possible in real time having a very clear, no gaps between the demand and the supply. So that is the way in which Brambles is facing this new paradigm in our industries, which is linking the physical platform with the power of digital. So if we look at the movements of the goods in whatever industry we are looking, it's amazing the number of transactions, the number of operations, the number of movements that our goods are done, across the world. So if we are able, to track and trace or to gather information from all those moves, so the power is huge. It's really amazing. So how to do that? Our first idea, our vision basically is to illuminate, to reimagine, and to transform the supply chain of our customers. And how to do that is through a Brambles platform based in the cloud, which is BRICS, is the Exchange Brambles platform, where we are going to manage all the data coming from the Internet of Things, so coming from the information that we can gather from the movements of the platforms that we use, pallets, crates, containers, with our customers. So we are feeding this platform with this information, and then we can provide some applications in order, to give or to provide to our customers in real time the movement of the goods, and even, the ambient conditions. So that is what Brambles envision, and how we can really operate and transform the supply chain of our customers. So the the benefits, the uses that we can offer in this sense are huge, but basically we can classify them in efficiency, more transparency, and collaboration. So I'm going to put some examples that are being tested or piloted right now in the consumer goods side. The data share for efficiencies, this is something that is very requested in the consumer goods side. So we have the retailers that are really demanding having the goods in a proper time in the supermarkets, because in the fast-moving consumer goods, so things should happen very, very, very quick. So the gap between the demand and the supply can create very high problems, to the retail side and to the manufacturer side, because they are missing a lot of sales. And on the other side, if they are, stocking pretty much, so they are losing money as well, because it's not efficient, it's not the optimization of their supply chain. So for that reason, we have started, creating some pilots in order to really prove the concept that we can track the movements of the goods across the supply chain, so from the manufacturer to the retailer to the DC, and to the DC to the store, in order to being able to understand, the inventory management, so having the situation of the number of products that we have in transit and even in the warehouses. We are able even to understand what are the lost nodes, so where we are maybe losing our products across the supply chain. And for instance, we can improve the customer service, because we are trying to, or we can react very quickly when we know that we are not delivering the goods in the timing that we commit with our customers. So we can monitor through the track and trace, the dwell time, we can monitor the cycle time, we can monitor even the time windows for deliveries. So it's something that we have already proved, and it's working pretty well in the consumer side. The data share from transparency, this is much more relating with the product. So we know that technology is there, technology can be used, and we have different sensors that can really track, the situation of our products in the environment. So we can track temperature, humidity, motion, even shocks. We can determine for some maybe high-value products when the product has been damaged across the supply chain. And this type of information is not only providing us the data that can give us the information enough in order to react, in order to solve the problems, but we can even prevent those problems because we can create our own network. We can really digitize the network and anticipate the problems for the future. Another example that I would like to bring to you is the collaboration, so data share for collaboration. So the example here is the transport collaboration. So powered by BRICS, which is this Brambles exchange platform, we are able to manage all the lanes of our customers. So we are able to cross or to match all the lanes in order to avoid empty miles. We know that transport is one of the most expensive lines in our P&L. We know even that transport is now scarce in Europe, so it's very difficult to find. So one of the things that big data can provide is putting together all the customer lanes, analyzing them, and trying to figure out how to avoid empty miles. So we have different products here. The one can be, the transport collaboration, which is between CHEP and our customers, transport orchestration, but we can arrive even, to manage transport for third parties, and we can manage even, all the transport services in the next future. So with big data, everything is possible. So by the end, so I want just to say, and the message that I would like to give you is that we have maybe to envision the future of our supply chain like a supply chain as a service. So we need to start creating the links between the different parties. We need to create a data shared ecosystem in order to make it much more efficient and good for our customers at the end. In order to improve the inventory, so in order to understand and be able to anticipate the demand, in order to minimize the administration because everything will be interconnected and we don't need to have manual work behind, and in order to optimize the supply chain by collaboration and by reducing the extra costs that we can do without, by having collaboration between all the parties. So this is the shared data ecosystem that we propose. For more information, you can visit our booth. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks, Marta.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marta. Next, we have Stephen Carr from Peel Ports Group.
Good afternoon, everybody. I think many of you who are used to speaking will be aware of the phrase the graveyard shift. It's often applied to that first slot after lunch when everyone comes back and a bit groggy. What's less well known is the last shift of the morning session is also the most dangerous because you're the only thing stood between 200 people and their lunch. So I'll make sure I stick to my 10 minutes and get us finished on time. The argument I want to put today is actually sometimes can technology be a barrier to innovation? I know that might be heresy given the theme of the conference and the session. But what I just want to explore over the course of the next few minutes is actually, does innovation get driven by technology, or is technology used to exploit the innovation in the first place? And to help explain this, I want to take a very current example, certainly that's dominating a lot of the UK port sector at the moment, and that's Brexit. We can't avoid it. But what's interesting is when we go out and we talk to cargo owners about what their contingency planning is for Brexit, it's either A, we'll hope there's a solution, well, good luck with that, or B, we're going to build a UK warehouse to hold contingency stock. And the reason for that is the Dover Straits has become such a dominant force in the way that goods move to and from between the UK and the continent, when trade lane tenders look at the alternative, there aren't very many alternatives to that route. If you look at this graph here, this graph shows you the share of the UK freight market. I've taken the Irish Sea volumes out of this. And what you can see, 2016, the Dover Straits had over 2/3 of that market. If you take out some of the Iberian routes and if you take out some of the Northern England and Scotland routes out, that rises to about 75%. So that proves the point that I'm saying. But if you look at the left-hand column, in 1993, the Dover Straits accounted for less than half of this market. The relevance of 1993, for those of you old enough like me who can remember these things, that was the year when the Maastricht Treaty was enforced and came into play. And what that did to the UK haulage market is it allowed foreign hauliers with big fuel tanks to come in and bring a new, cheaper diesel. At the time, the UK duty rate on diesel was very high compared to continental Europe. And actually, that shifted the market towards long-distance accompanied hauliers coming in from Europe. And you can see there on that graph, over the course of time, that actually the market has completely shifted away. And so now, when you look at those technology systems that enable procurement, very few options exist. The second thing that I want to show you, just in terms of some market analysis, is this graph. Don't worry about the details too much on here. What each of the pie charts show you are the 4 major trade routes that exist in and out of the UK. Top left, you've got the Dover and Channel Tunnel routes. You've got the East Coast ports on the top right. The bottom left is the Irish Sea market, and the bottom right is the market into the Thames estuary. They're not sized. Ignore the actual size of the circle. But the point on here is the blue element of this circle is accompanied freight, where the driver travels with the trailer. The red part of this circle is unaccompanied freight, where the trailer is left at the port and then collected at the other side. And what we see actually is that unaccompanied model actually could be a solution for Brexit. Now, before any of you ask any questions, I've got no inside track. I don't know what the government's planning. Some would argue that the government doesn't know what the government is planning. But what we've got to do is have a contingency. I think the only certainty around Brexit is that by the time a decision's made, it'll be too late for anybody to put any plans in place. And what's interesting about the unaccompanied model is that in itself, it provides a level of contingency planning. So we're very familiar with the Irish Sea route. And what we see there is very often the trailers aren't collected for 6-12 hours after the ship has arrived. So if you take that in conjunction with the time that the vessel's at sea, that allows times for the customs clearance to take place. One of the speakers earlier today talked about some of the challenges in road haulage. Part of that is driven by the shortage in drivers. So if we're short of drivers, why do we make them ineffective by sticking them on a ferry for 2 or 3 hours at a time? We've not really talked much today about the environmental impact of supply chains. But again, if you're using longer distance sea routes, you also deliver an environmental benefit. So we believe that the UK as a whole has a great opportunity to drive benefits to supply chain by moving towards this unaccompanied model. The final element of the unaccompanied model, of course, is that if you decided that there's going to be a catastrophe in a supply chain, there's nothing to stop you using the trailers for long-term storage. By that I mean 2, 3, 4 days. It's sufficient to provide you with a contingency stock, but it's a much cheaper solution and a much shorter term solution than investing in fixed assets such as warehouses. And the reason why these models are not being brought forward is because they don't exist. So when people go out and look, they look at what's the alternative to Dover, and those models don't exist in systems at the moment. This next slide just shows you what the comparative flows may look like. We've made this up so we don't give away any confidentialities of people that we're talking to. And what you can very clearly see there is if people just buy on the marine leg, the Calais-Dover route is a much shorter and a much cheaper route than, say, a Zeebrugge-Medway route. However, the extra £75 or so that marine leg would take is more than covered by the road savings on either side. So if you look there, there's around about 100 road miles saved in this particular example. And the net effect of all of this is the door-to-door cost is very broadly neutral. So again, if you go back to a technology-led procurement exercise, it doesn't really drive the change. This slide here, don't worry about reading the detail in too much, but this is just a chart that we use to show how an alternative model might balance up on a risk profile. And we've got two options here, one of which is build a contingency option around a new UK warehouse. And the right-hand column is using an unaccompanied model through Medway. Now, this, by the way, is replicable by many UK ports, so this isn't a sales pitch for Medway, although you'd be gratefully welcome. This is a model that can be replicated. But what you see down there is that actually from a risk profile perspective, moving to unaccompanied freight offered lots of advantages, whereas building a UK warehouse as contingency stock holds lots and lots of risks. So what we're arguing there is can a technology system really drive this innovation, and can it really assess risk profiles correctly? So if we accept that new innovation needs to be led by humans, it comes back to some of the points that speakers were making earlier today, that you still need that human intervention. How do you make these models work? And we believe that's through collaboration. Now, collaboration, I realise, is a word that's very, very often used, but it isn't often delivered through. So to make a model like this work, how do you get a new service to work? Well, firstly, for a port operator like ourselves to invest in assets and invest in infrastructure, we need to have a reasonable level of confidence that a vessel operator will put a service on. For the vessel service to put a new solution in place, they need to have certainty that there will be volume provided. For a manufacturer to say, yep, we'll give you 50 trailers, 70 trailers, 100 trailers a day, they need to know that that service is going to be reliable and deliver value. And then finally, for the third-party logistics operator in the middle, if they're going to contribute to the development of this innovative solution, they need to have a level of confidence that they're not going to lose the job because they're €1 out on price on a trade lane tender. So for me, how you bring innovation to logistics planning is all about creating that collaboration, making sure you mitigate everybody's risks and so on. Now, I can see you all getting very keen and eager for your lunch. So I'm not going to tell you which way around this works, but you've got your red and green cards in front of you. I'm going to give you a question. One of them will get you to your lunch a minute earlier. So the question is, I want you to think about the markets that you operate in. And is your supply chain a point of differentiation between you and your competitor or not? So if it's a point of differentiation, please hold up red. And if you don't compete on supply chain, you compete on product and price and so on, hold up green. So, unfortunately, that keeps you here for another 10 minutes. No, I'm joking. What's interesting, the reason why I asked that question is within the retail sector within the UK, a lot of retailers are now saying, actually, we don't compete on supply chain at all. We actually compete on the product, on the price, on the branding, on what's on the shelf. Just so you know, I think that was about 2/3 red and 1/3 green. Is that a fair point? Would you say that was about as fair?
I think it was mostly red.
It was mostly red, okay. So what that's saying there is so that probably means that you don't really want to collaborate on a model like this with your peers. So what that does in terms of technology, so once you form your consortium of suppliers to deliver a model like this, that's where I then think technology can then take over. So we talked earlier about digitization of contracts and automated decision making. I think once you establish that link between the port, between the third-party logistics provider, between the vessel operator and the people shipping the cargo, Once that's changed in place, that's when you can then start using technology to make that supply chain execution seamless. It's once you've defined the model. And once you've done that, and once you've created that collaboration, you can then start to look at lots of other options as well. And what I mean by that is once you've got that network and that party in place and that collaborative network, and you've got the basis of trust in place because you're executing transactions, that's the point where I believe that you can then look to further exploit the strength of that network and drive on and take extra value. Anyway, I've kept to my promise. I kept to my 10 minutes. When you get there, I hope you enjoy lunch, but I'm conscious there's maybe a few questions coming up now, so thank you for your time.
Thanks. So as Stephen mentioned, we are running a bit close to the end of the session, but if you have a question, then just put up your hand and a member of the team will come with the microphone. Just over there.
Hello, I have a question to the team consult. Is it possible to get answer? My name is Елизавета. I represent GAZ. It's automotive plant in Russia, and at the start of my career, I used to work at consulting. And the question is the following. Before, it was quite a stable situation, and when people hired consultants, it was some certain criteria. People should be good analyzed, first of all. And after all, they could address to some projects that were made before and provide some solution. And the question is, what are the criteria now for your company to hire people? How you recruit people and train them to solve the situations they should? I mean, how you hire efficient consultants? That is the question.
Well, yeah, this indeed is a very relevant question, because what I think our experience as all of us is this war for talent, because the European economy booming, good people are in very short supply. And when I start joking, I say, well, we even put up a second telephone line because the headhunters calling in blocked the telephone lines for the customers trying to call. And that must not happen. Well, if you look at my team, we're about 60 people, and it's a kind of a usual structure, you can say. It's a pyramid. There are some very old people like me. The majority is kind of young, and we hire out of university and train them. In these days, we sometimes suffer that they say, great 3 years, but there are many options outside. We have young professionals. More typical is a background in logistics than a background on the industrial side and in manufacturing. And we do hire experienced professionals like my colleague accompanying here, Vanessa Klonek, who looks back at a 15, 20 years career outside logistics, because the solutions we provide need, say, analytical powers. You can entrust experienced young people with that. But when it comes to transform that into advice and support implementation, you of course need experience. But I can say it is the number one challenge in these days. We always fight for customers, but the fight for good people is harder than actually for the customer and the business side. That's the situation of Europe at the moment.
Any more questions? Question again at the back.
Yes, Pim Ewalds, Ewalds Cargo Care. Thank you for your presentations. What I actually did miss a little bit was the link to sustainability. You all know that we have the Paris Agreement coming up. And basically I have a question on strategy. And maybe all of you can reply to that. Is it a logical result to reduce carbon footprint when you digitalize your processes? Or is it do you have a separate sustainability strategy of in your companies?
Should I start, Pim?
Please.
I think digitization or automation is only one aspect of sustainability that helps us. Is it everything? I don't think so. Sustainability at Magna is looking at the people, looking at the planet, and looking at the profit. So we need to get to be a sustainable, profitable company, relying on educated, developed people, and working in an environment that helps us to respect nature and our planet. Yeah. So digitization helps us to increase efficiency and has an effect on people. Yes, on all those 3 dimensions, but it's not everything.
And what is your additional vision on sustainability then for Magna? In specific, where do you invest in as a company?
We focus,
apart from digitization.
The company priorities is world-class processes, is innovation, and it's people development. And all those 3 core priorities shall support the sustainability aspects.
Okay, thank you.
I think if I just put a view in there as well, I think that we have 2 approaches to environmental sustainability within what we do. I think firstly, of course, as everybody else, it's all about how can you use technology, equipment and innovation in kit better. But actually we spend as much time looking at how we can change our processes. So actually we remove the need for any energy to be used as possible. If you just go back to the example that I gave before, whilst it wasn't the driver of that particular strategy that's about mitigating an impact of Brexit, the factor that you've got longer sea legs and shorter road legs will by default mean there's a reduction in carbon. And so what we think the challenge is, and again, if you look at the 3 modes of transport, shipping, rail and road, that's the merit order for how you want to do it. So we think that it's sat at the heart of planning and collaborative thinking, open up new routes, and that's going to be as successful a driver of carbon reduction as potentially the introduction of new technology.
In our case, maybe yes, I'm going to be very quick. Sustainability is part of our business model because we are using platforms that are being reused by the different customers across the supply chain. So we are repair our equipment and put them already, delivering to our customers. So our business in itself is sustainable. So and we are really enhancing with digital transformation this principle. Because as I put an example, the transport collaboration is helping our customer to reduce the CO2 emissions in Europe, for instance. So we are able to provide not just a cost saving, but even the reduction of CO2, which is very important. More companies are really signing off different KPIs in order to start reducing the CO2 year on year around the 20%. So we are really supporting with this type of big data analytics our customer in order to be more efficient and obviously complying with all the sustainability objectives that they have.
Thank you.
Okay, so I don't want to end on a sour note by mentioning the B word, but I have a question on Brexit for Stephen. So how can port operators support logistics companies through the Brexit process?
I think being close to companies who move cargo is something that we've done for a number of years now. It's something it's a strategy we started in our container terminal nearly 7 years ago now. And it's something that we've now taken across our sectors. I was talking to somebody in the break earlier, and ports are often described as a bit of a black hole. The ship arrives, the goods disappear for a day or two, and then they re-emerge into the supply chain. There will undoubtedly be, even today there are issues and delays in ports. And what our view is how can you create value in that time that a product is in the port? And so what we do, and with cargo owners as well as vessel operators, is talk about what processes can be brought into the port environment. It could be temporary storage. It could be rework. If I had another 5 minutes, I'll talk to you about how Disney's beanbags get sent inland when you order them online and what takes place in the port environment. But then I will get lots of bread rolls thrown at me if I start that conversation now. But each and every different cargo owner has a different need. I think what we found is we thought we could go out with just one solution, and that suits everybody. It doesn't. What works for one cargo owner doesn't work with another. I imagine what works for one automotive manufacturer won't work for another. So what port operators need to do, certainly in the run-up to Brexit, is understand that, whilst the future's uncertain, we don't know what customs arrangement we'll be under, we don't understand yet what other, a bigger issue on Brexit than customs is actually inspection of products and product specification. What delays will they cause to the lorries behind the ones that are being stopped? So I think what we can do is create solutions that add value and mitigate those risks, and that's what port operators need to do.
Okay, so I think any more questions will have to be asked during the lunch, which is just outside this room on the left. Thank you very much to the speakers during this session. Some interesting presentations. Thank you and enjoy your lunch, everyone.